I'd been looking forward to that weekend for months. Just me, a tent, and 2 full days of nothing but open sky, and the kind of quiet you can only find way out in the woods. I work a desk job in a crowded downtown office, and between the constant noise and the traffic and the endless buzz of my phone, I needed the break bad. A buddy of mine had told me about a spot about 2 hours out from town, a thin, winding creek that ran through the woods behind an old hunting trail. It wasn't an official campsite or anything, just a place locals sometimes went if they wanted to get away without anyone around. That sounded exactly like what I needed. I packed light, tent, sleeping bag, some basic food, a little hatchet for firewood, and headed out early Saturday morning. The drive out was all long stretches of back road, nothing but fields and thick patches of pine trees. By the time I parked at the edge of the woods, it was already pushing mid-morning, and the heat was creeping in. The first hour or so of hiking was easy. The trail was overgrown but still clear enough if you paid attention. I liked how silent it was. No distant hum of cars, no people shouting over each other, just birds, insects, the occasional creak of trees shifting in the wind. It wasn't until I got about halfway to the creek that I noticed him. He was standing about 20 feet off the trail, facing my direction. At first, I thought maybe he was another hiker, but something felt off. He wasn't moving, just standing there, half hidden behind a crooked tree. His clothes were dark, jeans and a baggy jacket even though it was pushing 80 degrees, and he had this big, battered backpack slung over one shoulder. I gave a small wave, like a, hey, just passing through kind of thing. He didn't wave back, didn't even really react, just stood there, like he was waiting for something. I kept walking, trying to play it cool, but the hair on the back of my neck was standing up. I didn't look back, but I could feel it. That tight, crawling feeling between your shoulder blades when you know someone's eyes are still on you. Maybe he was just a hunter or something. Maybe he lived nearby. I kept telling myself that over and over, like if I said it enough times, it would be true. By the time I reached the creek, I'd mostly shaken the feeling off. The water was low, but clear, and there was a wide, flat patch of ground, just a few feet back from the edge that looked perfect for setting up camp. I pitched my tent, cracked open a can of beans for lunch, and tried to let the sound of the running water wash away the leftover nerves. Hours passed. The sun dropped low, bleeding orange and pink across the tops of the trees. I built a fire, small but steady, and settled in for the night with a book and a cheap camping lantern. It wasn't until a little after midnight that I heard it, a soft, deliberate crunch of footsteps just outside the reach of the firelight. At first, I thought maybe it was an animal, a deer maybe, or even a bear, though I hadn't seen much sign of anything big out here. I sat up slow, listening. Another step, another, and then nothing. The woods fell dead silent, and the skin on my arms prickled with goosebumps. Something wasn't right. Animals don't just stop like that unless they're spooked. I reached over and grabbed the flashlight out of my bag, my heart thudding slow and hard in my ears. I clicked it on and swept the beam out toward the trees. Nothing. Just twisted trunks and low shrubs and the flicker of the firelight catching on the leaves. But I could feel it again. The weight of eyes, heavy and cold, somewhere out there in the dark. I sat there frozen for what felt like forever, trying to tell myself it was nothing, that I was just wound up after the weird encounter earlier. But deep down, I knew. Someone was out there. Someone who didn't want me to know he was still watching. I didn't sleep much after that. Every crack of a twig or rustle of leaves had me snapping awake, gripping the flashlight tight in my sweaty hand. I told myself I was being paranoid, that it was just the woods doing what woods do, that weird sounds at night didn't mean anything. By sunrise, I was running on maybe an hour of real sleep, and I decided then and there that I wasn't staying another night. Whatever peace I'd been chasing when I came out here, it wasn't worth it. I packed up as quick as I could, shoving my gear into my backpack without even rolling it properly. I doused the fire and gave one last long look around the campsite. Nothing. No footprints, no broken branches, no sign that anyone had ever been there but me. Still, I couldn't shake the feeling. The hike back started okay. The morning air was cool, and the trail looked different in the daylight. Less eerie, more just empty. But about halfway back, I caught movement out of the corner of my eye. I spun, heart hammering, but there was nothing there. I picked up the pace a little. Maybe a mile later, I found something that stopped me cold. In the middle of the trail, right where I would have to pass, there was a bundle. Looked like a rolled-up old jacket, tied around what seemed like a couple sticks. But when I looked closer, I realized it wasn't just random. It was a makeshift figure, almost like a scarecrow, about the size of a kid, slumped over the path like it had been tossed there. I backed up instinctively, scanning the woods on either side. I couldn't see anything, but the feeling was back, stronger than ever. I thought about turning around, but the idea of spending one more night out here, of trying to find a different way out without getting lost, wasn't an option. I stepped around the figure carefully, never taking my eyes off the trees. The rest of the hike was a blur. I half-jogged, my pack bouncing against my back, barely noticing the roots and rocks I was stumbling over. Every few minutes I thought I heard footsteps behind me, soft and steady, but every time I looked back, the trail was empty. When I finally burst out of the woods and back into the clearing where my car was parked, it felt like stepping into another world. Safe, solid, real. I didn't waste time. I threw my stuff into the back seat and peeled out of there so fast I sprayed gravel everywhere. I didn't look in the rearview mirror until I was a good few miles down the road. I still don't know who that man was, or what he wanted. But every now and then, when I'm lying in bed at night and the world outside goes still, I think about the way he stood there, silent and unmoving, and wonder, how close had he gotten while I was asleep? I had been working overtime for weeks, and by Friday night, I was totally fried. My friend Trevor suggested I get out of town for a couple of days, clear my head. He mentioned this little fire lookout tower you could rent out a couple hours north, up in the woods near the state border. Real isolated, no Wi-Fi, no neighbors, just a cabin perched above the trees. It sounded perfect. Saturday morning, I packed up my Jeep with some basic stuff, food, a sleeping bag, a couple books, and hit the road. The drive up was actually kinda nice. 2 hours of winding forest roads, barely another car in sight. I followed the directions to this narrow dirt path off the highway, climbed slowly for what felt like forever until the trees opened up. And there it was, a tiny, weathered tower sitting at the edge of a clearing, creaking a little in the wind. I parked and grabbed my gear, hiked up the narrow metal stairs. The inside was super basic, just a cot, a desk, and huge windows on all sides. I could see for miles, nothing but green and hills all around. The quiet was crazy at first. No humming fridges, no traffic noise, just the sound of wind moving through the trees. The first few hours were amazing. I read for a while, made a sandwich, sat out on the little balcony. As the sun started setting, the whole forest turned this deep gold color. I could feel my brain finally slowing down. I built a little fire in the pit outside before it got dark. It wasn't much, but it gave off a nice warmth. I sat there just watching the sky go purple when I heard a noise. Soft crunching, like footsteps on leaves. At first, I figured it was an animal. There were tons of deer signs on the way up. But then I caught movement out of the corner of my eye, way off between the trees. It was a guy. He was walking along the tree line, maybe 100 yards away. Too far to really make out details, but I could tell he was tall, kinda lanky. He wasn't hiking or anything, didn't have a pack or poles, just walking, slow, almost like he wasn't sure where he was going. I stayed sitting by the fire, pretending not to notice him. After a minute, he disappeared behind some trees. Probably just another camper, I told myself. Maybe lost. But there was this weird thing about how he moved. Something aimless and stiff. I stayed by the fire until it got almost full dark, tossing in wood just to keep it going. Every once in a while, I'd glance out toward the woods, half expecting to see him again. I didn't. Still, something felt off. When the fire started burning low, I decided to head up to the tower. I double-checked the door latch behind me, even though it wasn't like there were locks or anything. I told myself I was being paranoid. Still, when I lay down on the cot, I kept the flashlight within reach, just in case. The tower creaked softly in the wind, the way old metal does. And for a while I stared up at the dark ceiling, listening to every little sound outside. Mostly it was nothing, just leaves, wind, normal stuff. But a little after midnight, I woke up suddenly. I don't know why. There was this stillness outside. A weird, dead silence, like the woods were holding their breath. And then I heard it again. Crunch, crunch, footsteps. But this time, closer. I stayed frozen on the cot, barely breathing. The steps were slow, deliberate. Crunch. Pause. Crunch. Like whoever it was didn't care about being quiet. I grabbed the flashlight and crept toward the window. I tried not to breathe too loud, not to make the metal floor squeak under me. I pressed my face close to the glass, angling it down toward the base of the tower. At first, I didn't see anything. Just the dim outline of the trees, the curve of the fire pit in the dark. Then, movement. A figure standing near the bottom of the stairs, just standing there, looking up. I couldn't see his face in the dark, but I knew it was the guy from before. Same tall, lanky build, same slow, stiff way of moving. He wasn't calling out for help or trying to climb up, just standing there, staring up at me. I stepped back quickly, heart hammering so loud I was sure he could hear it. I killed the flashlight. I didn't want to give him any more of a target. Minutes passed, or maybe it was just seconds. I kept glancing at the window, barely peeking out. He hadn't moved. He was still at the bottom, motionless. What did he want? If he was lost or needed help, why not say something? Why just stand there? I weighed my options. My Jeep was parked maybe 50 yards away, on the far side of the clearing. If I bolted, there was a chance I could get to it. But I'd have to go right past him down the narrow stairs. Not happening. I stayed put, praying he'd get bored and leave. At some point, I don't know when, I must have dozed off sitting there by the window, flashlight still clutched in my hand. When I opened my eyes again, the first light of dawn was creeping over the trees. The guy was gone. I spent maybe 2 minutes packing everything up, didn't even bother folding the sleeping bag, and ran straight to the Jeep. I kept looking over my shoulder, expecting him to lunge out from the trees. But the clearing was empty. Driving back down that narrow road, my hands shook on the wheel. Every shadow between the trees felt like it was about to step out at me. I didn't stop until I hit the main highway, and even then, I didn't breathe easy until I was an hour away. I never reported it. What could I say? A weird guy looked at me all night? I still wonder, though. Was he just some messed-up drifter wandering the woods? Or was he waiting for me to come down? And if I had, would anybody have ever found me? A couple years back, I rented this tiny cabin way out near Timber Creek for a weekend. I was working a desk job back then, pretty much glued to a screen all day, and I needed to get out bad. The cabin wasn't anything fancy. One room, basic bed, tiny little bathroom, and a front porch that looked out into pure woods. No cell service, no neighbors for miles. It sounded perfect. I packed light, a backpack with some clothes, a couple books, and a cooler full of food. I figured I'd just hike around during the day and chill out by the fire at night. Nothing complicated. The drive out there was longer than I expected. The paved roads turned into gravel, and then gravel turned into dirt. By the time I pulled up in front of the place, it was late afternoon, and the whole area had this dead quiet vibe, the kind of silence that almost rings in your ears. I unlocked the cabin. The owners had left the key under a fake rock, classic, and stepped inside. Dust motes floated in the sunlight. The air smelled like old wood and something a little stale, but it wasn't bad. Homey, almost. After I unpacked, I sat out on the porch with a beer and just breathed. For the first time in a long time, I wasn't surrounded by buzzing phones or emails, just wind and birds and the occasional creak from the trees. As it started getting dark, I cooked a quick dinner on the little propane stove and read for a while. The cabin didn't have much in the way of curtains, just some old blinds, so when night fully fell, it felt very dark inside, like the darkness outside was pressing up against the windows. I shrugged it off and kept reading. Somewhere around 10, while flipping a page, I heard it. A soft crunch, like someone stepping on leaves. I froze, my heart ticking up a notch. I listened. Nothing. Probably an animal, I told myself. I mean, I was basically sitting in their territory. Still, I got up and pulled the blinds tighter. Another crunch. Closer this time. Just outside the window. I clicked off the lamp. My eyes slowly adjusted to the faint moonlight leaking through the cracks. I stood there, barely breathing, straining to hear anything else. But it was dead silent again. Maybe it was just the house settling. Old places do that, right? I waited a few more minutes before turning the lamp back on. The cozy glow filled the room again, chasing off the paranoia. I laughed a little at myself and went to brush my teeth. When I came back into the main room, something caught my eye. The front door. It was unlocked. I'm sure I had locked it after coming in. I'm borderline obsessive about stuff like that. My stomach dropped. I locked it again, this time triple checking, and dragged one of the heavy chairs in front of it, just in case. I told myself I'd overreacted, that maybe I'd just thought I'd locked it. Still, it took a long time to fall asleep that night. I woke up to complete darkness. For a second, I wasn't even sure what had woken me. Then I heard it, the faintest tapping sound, like fingertips brushing wood. It was coming from the porch. I laid there, heart pounding in my ears, not moving, just listening. Tap, tap, tap. It wasn't the wind. It was too rhythmic, too deliberate. I grabbed my flashlight from next to the bed and clicked it on, aiming it toward the door. Light spilled over the wood floor. The chair still braced against the door. I inched toward the window beside the door and peered out through the slats in the blinds. At first, I saw nothing. Then movement, just at the edge of the porch. A figure. Someone standing completely still, just beyond the light. I couldn't make out a face. Just the vague outline of a man, tall, maybe wearing a hoodie or a jacket. He wasn't doing anything, just standing there, watching. My mouth went dry. I stepped back from the window, heart hammering. What the hell was I supposed to do? No cell service, no neighbors. My car was parked behind the cabin, maybe 100 feet away. But getting to it meant going outside. I waited. Minutes crawled by. I didn't hear the tapping anymore, but I didn't dare look again. At some point, I don't know how long, I must have fallen asleep, because the next thing I knew, Sunlight was bleeding in through the blinds. I jumped up, instantly remembering everything. I ran to the window. The porch was empty. When I opened the door, I saw it. Right there on the dusty wood of the porch floor, bare footprints, dozens of them, like someone had been pacing back and forth all night. I didn't waste time. I shoved my stuff into my backpack, grabbed my keys, and booked it to the car. The whole drive back to the main road, I kept checking my rearview mirror, half expecting to see that figure again. I still have no idea who that was or what they wanted. And sometimes, when I can't sleep, I think about those footprints, and I wonder how long had he been standing there before I even noticed.
If these stories sent a chill down your spine, go ahead and tap that like button and subscribe for more eerie tales. What would you do if you were caught in one of these unsettling situations? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I'd really love to hear what's on your mind. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next nightmare.